Welcome to today's Meet the Funder session, where you'll learn more about the Co-op Local Community Fund. The session will be delivered by Julie Duran and Lindsay Milnes. Over to you, Julie.
Well, welcome everybody. I'm just going to share my screen and then I'm going to hand over to Lindsay, who's going to do the first part of the presentation. Because the presentation is so large, it will be difficult for us to share the actual presentation with you, but there is an option to watch it back on the YouTube. But we will be sharing the actual application form with you. That is something we are able to send through to you. So without further ado, can we all see the presentation? If I could just have a few hands up, that would be helpful. Good, thank you. So over to Lindsay.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm Lindsay Milnes. I've worked for the Co-op for about 4 years, but I've also worked in lots of the different communities across Oldham, Rochdale, generally in the museums actually. So I've come a different route, but I'm loving all the community work and things that are going on and stuff that we can get involved in from the Co-op. So today, as Julie said, we're letting you know about the Local Community Fund, which is open for another couple of weeks for applications, and across the session we'll introduce it, we'll help you understand the eligibility for it. As Julie said, look at the application form, which is we've pretty much screenshot all the different pages for that, so you can get an understanding of how long it is and what you need to fill in. We're not doing other funding opportunities because Julie does that in obviously a role with Action Together, and we can do that a different way. So we're going to skip that bit and then we can ask questions at the end. We'll move on to the next slide. Again, I've mentioned there's a couple of weeks left, so it closes on Sunday, the 11th of June. The application's all online. It funds projects across the whole of the UK, and each community is divided up into communities that link with our Co-op stores and our Co-op funeral cares, which there's quite a few of in Rochdale. I also cover Oldham and Manchester City Centre as well. So in Rochdale, there's 4 different communities there. So this opportunity is for 12 groups to be able to apply for this. What they're done, what happens is you're selected for a whole year if you're successful, starting in October this year, and we'll tell you a bit more about how the funding is created throughout that year. It's one of our flagship community programmes. It really helps us link with the community in a meaningful way. A lot of people have got that history of the Co-op, especially our kind of grandparents and parents era. They all remember the divvy numbers and the community, the Co-op being at the centre of their community. So it's something that is really, really important to us. And there's a lot of work that goes on in head office as well to ensure that it's based on local insight and research, that we're supporting real needs in our community. So we'll tell you a bit more about the priorities. So I mentioned, so if you're successful, your kind of Co-op journey starts in the October this year and continues for 12 months. And within that 12 months, 1p from every £1 that customers and members, you do have to be a Co-op member in store to help with this fund. 1p from every £1 spent on Co-op goods and products, or the Co-op branded stuff, goes directly to the local community fund. So each time people shop and they scan their blue card at the till, a penny from every single £1 that is spent on any Co-op products will automatically be assigned to your community, and it will be split between the 3 successful groups for each community. As I said, there's 4 different community areas in Rochdale that we cover. So far, that's actually a little bit less than what it was. So after last year, the fund had been running since 2016, and we've raised over £117 million for local grassroots causes really across the country. So what do we want to achieve through this? So like we said, we want to create really meaningful relationships with our local communities and the needs, and help mutually support those needs really. So we do have quite a strict policy on what we will and what we won't fund, which we'll get into in a minute. We make sure that it's really aligned with our whole community mission strategy, that it reflects the diversity of our communities and members, that those projects, even though it might be a small pot of money, it might be something that really sets something off from scratch, or just a project that really makes a difference. And as I said, 3 causes in each of the communities from October the 22nd, and across the country that's nearly 4,000 local causes. I've already mentioned this, again, 1p to the local community fund part from the members card. If you're not a member, I really encourage you to apply, because it just makes such a difference in our communities, and it's an automatic payment. It doesn't cost you any more. It's kind of matched with your reward that you get on your card as well, so you get money back and the community gets the same money back as well. It's actually 2p, so your reward as a personal member is 2p when you shop, 2p in every pound you get back, like the Advantage card at Boots, but the other 2p is split. So I mentioned the 1p to this fund, and then another 1p goes directly to a central fund as well. So this, at the moment, we're supporting a bigger partnership at the co-op at centrally, which is with your local pantry, to support them to grow their network of community fridges, and that other penny goes into bigger partnerships like that as well, but also working directly with local communities. The payout, which is probably what you're most interested in, is done via we do it with a visible check, usually have a celebration, don't we, in store, Julie? So it's quite a fun day where we get everyone, all our local causes together, and you get the payout in November 2024. So like I said, at the end of that 12-month period where the funds have accrued through the members. And yeah, like I said, we have a bit of a celebration in November. So who can apply? So these are this is the mission. Our mission statement is cooperating for a fairer world, and we just make sure that the different groups that apply are all working to that same aim, and that's through these 4 gateways. So if your group brings people together to access food in any way, so it might be a pantry, a food bank, a community fridge, you might just do some wraparound activities of food education, cost of living support, things like that. If it brings access to food, that's a brilliant one. If you help improve people's mental well-being, so any groups around that. So a great example that we support at the moment is in Saddleworth. They're called Breathe, and they set up during COVID to initially support parents who had young people with mental health difficulties, and it's grown and grown and grown. And with co-op support, she managed to put together a great event last weekend called the Wellbe Fest, where she got all different mental health charities and networked together under one roof, had people doing talks, and she's also supporting people online through that as well. They meet regularly in person and online to support each other. So that's a great example of something that helps mental well-being. The next one is creating opportunities for young people, and especially ones that give them a voice about their futures, and kind of take action. So that's young people. And then the last one is supporting tackling climate change, things like possibly growing clubs, where you're protecting nature as well. Another example, I don't know why they're all Saddleworth, these are the Saddleworth Hydro. They're a small group that work with duff stones to create energy. So yeah, any eco-friendly groups that are helping to you know, aim towards helping tackle climate change. So yeah, just at the bottom of that last slide, we don't need to go back, but it's reminded me to mention. So your funding goal is built up for a year. So you've got to kind of be thinking about, well, my project that we want this funding for is going to happen the year after. So it's going to be in 2024 after you've got the check in and the money in the previous November. So yeah, some more examples there. If you just want to have a scan read, we don't really need to read them all out. You've probably got the idea of the different types of groups that we will support. Yeah, I think we've mentioned most of this. Yes, some more mental wellbeing groups might involve bereavement or counselling services, things like that. And some more ideas for young people's groups. So I think, Julie, you're going to take it from here, aren't you, to tell them how they can actually apply.
Okay, though. Thanks, Lindsay, for that great presentation. So who can apply? So obviously you need to be a charity with a charitable registration number, or a constituted group with a constitutional documentation providing not-for-profit activities. You will need to have your bank details. Obviously, you'll need to have a bank account, and you will need to have a recent bank statement to be able to apply, and you'll be able to have somebody who's your primary contact and a secondary contact as well, and you'll need a photograph of your group doing some activity. And I'll go through all that as we work our way through the application form. So it is a two-stage process. It is one of the easiest applications you will ever do for those people who are used to filling out onerous pages of application forms. It is a fairly straightforward process. It's an online process, so you will need to do it online. So as with anything, any online application, you will need to set up an account first. So once you've set up your account, it should be plain sailing from there on. There's a link to apply. Again, we'll send all this information to you in all the documents we send out after today's presentation. Once you've registered and signed on, you'll get to this page and you will click the button Apply Now. I must say that you are able to save the application as you go along, so don't worry. If you want to do a bit of the application, have a bit of a rest and go back to it later, you are able to save your application and then go back. So if when you get to the application stage and you realise, oh, I need my bank statement or I need my constitution, you've got them all ready before you apply. That just helps you get yourself organised, really. What it does do as part of the form, it gives you a postcode checker. So believe it or not, some areas you can get anything from a few £100s from the community fund to thousands of pounds, depending on where you live, how big the store is, how many people are using the membership cards, how many people are voting for your cause. So this gives you an idea of how much your organisation will get based on your location and based on previous years' sort of money that we've raised through this fund. So once you've created your account, you've set that up with your email address, and you get your email verification, and you've created your account, you are ready to go. The first thing you'll have to do is obviously agree to the terms and conditions of the application. Please avoid using any acronyms. So if you are, for example, Lakeland ABC, please make sure you always use the full wording Lakeland Amateur Boxing Club. Please don't use acronyms, because for those people who are reading your application, they might not know what that acronym is. Use short sentences but full paragraphs. Don't make it easy to read and easy to understand for those people who are reading the application. And if you're going to be putting any links in to your group, make sure they work. Your Facebook links, your Twitter links, your Instagram links, just make sure that all those things work in advance before including them in your application form. So basically, it's a 6-step easy application form, as I've mentioned, and that just lists what you'll need in terms of extra information that you will need to provide, which again, you will all be used to sending your annual income, your bank details, your bank statements. Simple tick box there as to what your organisation is, which category you come under, how much your organisation earns each year. Again, that's really key to us, because if you earn over a certain amount of money, unfortunately this fund won't be for you. A little bit of a summary there of how does your group help the community. Again, the people reading this only need a snapshot of what you're doing. We don't need War and Peace. It needs to be clear, concise and to the point. And you've only got 374 characters there to be able to do that. You contact the person, the 2 people who are going to be your contact with reference to this application, and who the co-op will contact if they need any information. You can only apply for one of the categories, as Lindsay mentioned before. There are various categories, and you need to decide which category it is that you're going to be fitting into, and what you're going to be doing with the money. So only one you can choose. And how many people will your project help? Again, it's sometimes a difficult question, but it's just a tick box exercise, so don't think too much about that. This is where you'll need to describe the project that you want the money for. So again, be really clear and concise. You've only got 200 characters. Try and use all the characters up if you can. And as with any application, you'll also have to tell us how you're going to spend the money. So you'll need to do a bit of a breakdown on how you're going to be spending the money. So don't just say we want £1,000. You'll need to itemise in the box below how you're going to be spending that money. This is the page where you put your bank details in, and you upload your bank statement or a pay-in slip as proof of those bank details. So very straightforward. You're used to all filling that in for funders, so that should be quite an easy one for you. Your application details are correct before you hit the submit button. And finally, the last thing really is a nice photograph of your group. A photograph that really shows what you are doing. It really shows what your project is all about. And it's really important, that photograph, because when you look online at the different causes, that photo's got to, show people and tell 1,000 words with that photograph, really. So make sure that the photograph's a good one, and that if you haven't got anybody on it, if you need any permission from those people to be on that photograph, that's really important. So there you go. That's an example of a Brownie and Guide group, all happy, smiley people, and then your links to your other websites will go there as well. Once you've done all that, it's basically send off your application and you're done. You'll get a case number ID, which you'll need to quote in any communication with the co-op, and then you will sit back and you will wait to find out if your application has been successful. So these are some of the key dates. Once your application has been submitted, they'll all be checked at head office in terms of eligibility, that you've got everything included. As I've mentioned, your bank details, your photograph, all that has to be checked at head office. And then that takes a couple of months, because believe it or not, there's obviously thousands of people who will be applying across the country. There will then be a small panel of people who will meet in September to decide on which of the applications. So in Rochdale, we will obviously only be looking at the Rochdale applications. We're not going to be looking at applications from down south or, further afield. We will only be looking at applications within Rochdale. and there'll be a small panel of people who will meet to look at those applications. And a decision will then be expected in October 23, and they will go live late October, and your causes can start to earn the money for your cause. And I think that's it in terms of the application. I've also mentioned about choosing the photograph. I can't stress how important that is. And again, if you look at that picture there with the no ball games, that doesn't really tell you anything about a project, does it? But, you know, compared to the one on the right with everybody, the children and the gentlemen there doing some activity, that obviously is much better. So think about your photograph. That's probably the hardest part, if I'm honest, in terms of the application. So back over to Lindsay just to sort of clarify a few points, and we're nearly ready for questions.
Brilliant, thanks Julie. Yeah, so on that photo, I know we keep going on about it, but it appears on everybody's, like every member's account. So if what happens with the 1p in every pound, it automatically you know, grows as the year goes on, and then that amount at the end is decided on members, because they can choose which cause they want their reward to go to. A lot of members don't choose. If they don't choose, you still get that money, but the pot is kind of just equally divided up between those three groups in each community at the end. So it can often look, if you are a local cause, when you keep checking, because I'm always checking as a member, it gets quite addictive actually to see what people are getting, and you know, it rising up. If you are looking, yeah, what was I saying about the photo? That photo does really kind of convince members to choose you as where they want their reward to go to as well. So and we promote that as well all the way through. So as well as getting the funding, you also get a bit of a package of support where, you know, myself and member pioneers, Julie, we will be promoting what you do, and also promote membership and get people on board to help raise the funds. You can apply if you've applied before, that's not a problem. We're always on the lookout for new causes, but it's not a problem if you have applied before. Please apply. You do need the bank account, there's no way around that. If it's part of a bigger project, it kind of needs to pay for a certain element of that project. We can only fund however much money we get through that member's reward and that members fund. So just for example, last year, I mean, we had a bit of a lull through COVID because obviously people weren't going into store as much. People were buying stuff online, the card wasn't used as much, so it did drop a little bit. But last year we were kind of between £2,000 and £3,000. So it was over £27,000 across Rochdale. So that's not a bad pot of money to have a share in. So that's similar in Oldham, similar amount there. Yeah, I don't know Tameside because I don't cover that area, but I'm sure we can find out if there's anybody from Tameside. I can get in touch with the other coordinator if you want any information. So yeah, we can't support projects there at the bottom that are completed by April. They kind of need to continue because you won't get the money until November next year. So it's just thinking of timescales as well. Yeah, we'll move on. Right, I'm sure there's probably some questions. So now there's plenty of time left to answer any questions if you've got any.